You're walking through a forest. Something moves ahead of you on the trail. A deer freezes, looks at you, and then it's gone, crashing through the undergrowth like you're the most terrifying thing it has ever seen in its entire life. And you're just standing there in hiking boots, holding a granola bar, breathing. Here's what's strange about that. The deer didn't run because of guns. It didn't run because of habitat destruction or industrial farming or anything that happened in the last few centuries. The fear you just triggered in that animal is older than agriculture, older than fire, older possibly than our species as it currently exists. You walked into the woods and set off an alarm system that was installed millions of years before you were born. That's the part nobody tells you. We tend to assume that animals are scared of us because of what we've done, the hunting, the clearing, the encroaching. And yes, all of that is real. But the fear runs so much deeper than that. Prey animals flee from humans at distances up to 40 times greater than they flee from other large predators. 40 times. A lion shows up and a gazelle waits to see what it does. You show up and everything within eyeshot makes a very important appointment somewhere else immediately. Which, honestly, is a little humbling. The question isn't really whether animals are scared of us. They obviously are. The question is what that fear actually is, where it comes from, how deep it goes, and what it means that it exists at all. Because the answer is not the one you'd expect. It's older and stranger, and once you see it, it changes the way you look at every animal you'll ever encounter again. Even the squirrel having a crisis on your lawn. Especially that squirrel. There's a term ecologists use that sounds almost poetic until you think about what it actually means. The landscape of fear. Joel Brown coined it in the 1990s, and the idea is this. Fear doesn't just change what an animal does in the moment. It rewrites the entire map of how that animal moves through the world. Where it eats, where it sleeps, which valleys it avoids, which open ground it won't cross even when it's hungry. The fear becomes geography. Here's the part that gets me. In Yellowstone, researchers studied elk behavior relative to wolf predation zones. The elk didn't just avoid places where wolves actually were. They avoided places where wolves might be. Open valleys, river bends with limited sight lines. Anywhere the risk calculation tipped even slightly toward danger. The wolves didn't have to be present. The possibility of wolves was enough to restructure how the elk used the entire landscape. Now apply that to humans. We don't just occupy space, we haunt it. Animals adjust their behavior across territories far larger than anywhere we actually go, because the scent of us, the sound of us, the mere statistical chance of us is already enough to trigger the whole system. A forest you walked through last Tuesday is still, in some meaningful sense, a forest that smells like a threat. The elk don't know you left. What this produces, and this is the part that took me a while to sit with, is a kind of invisible pressure that reshapes ecosystems from the inside. Animals graze less, they move more, they spend energy on vigilance instead of calories. The fear tax, you could call it, paid constantly, whether or not you're anywhere nearby. A prey animal in a human-adjacent landscape is essentially running a background process at all times, scanning, recalculating, never fully at rest. Which sounds exhausting, because it is. Studies tracking the stress hormones of deer near hiking trails show elevated cortisol levels even on days when no hikers show up. The trail is enough. The idea of you is enough. So here's the part that sounds like a compliment, but really isn't. In 2015, a team of researchers led by Chris Darramont published a study in Science that looked at how humans compare to other predators. And the number they landed on was 9. We kill prey animals at 9 times the rate of any other predator on Earth. 9 times. A great white shark, a pack of wolves, a pride of lions, all of them, by comparison, are basically dabbling. That sounds like a power stat, a flex. It is not a flex. Because the truly destabilizing part isn't the quantity, it's the selection. Every other predator on the planet, every single one, preferentially targets the young, the old, the sick, the slow. That's not cruelty. That's just how predation works. It takes the edges of a population and leaves the reproductive core intact. The species absorbs it. Evolution has had hundreds of millions of years to calibrate prey animals to survive exactly that kind of pressure. We do the opposite. We hunt adults at their reproductive peak, the biggest, the strongest, the most genetically successful individuals. Those are the ones we want. A trophy hunter doesn't go home with the limping one. A commercial fishery doesn't target the runts. We have, essentially, invented a form of predation that no prey species on Earth evolved any defense against, because nothing like it has ever existed before. Evolution doesn't send newsletters. It can't warn a species that the new predator plays by completely different rules. If this is the kind of thing that gets you, drop a like, leave a comment. It genuinely helps. Anyway, what this means in practice is that animal populations exposed to human hunting face a kind of pressure that their biology has no prior template for. The fear response that kept their ancestors alive against lions, hang back, assess, run if it charges, is almost comically mismatched to a threat that kills from 200 meters away before anything has time to charge at all. A mountain lion is a known quantity. We are something else entirely. Think about what a predator is supposed to look like from an animal's perspective. It's supposed to be faster than you or strong enough to overpower you. It's supposed to hunt at a predictable time, dawn, dusk, the hours when visibility drops. It's supposed to work alone or in a pack of a known size, using a known method. A cheetah chases. A crocodile waits at the waterline. An eagle drops from above. Every major predator on Earth has a signature, a pattern. And prey animals, over millions of years, have evolved threat detection systems calibrated to those specific patterns. We don't have one. We hunt in the morning and at night. We hunt alone and in groups of hundreds. We hunt silently from distances that would have been physically impossible for any predator in evolutionary history. And then we hunt loudly, in bright orange vests, making noise the whole time. We use fire. We use traps that kill without us being present at all. We show up in vehicles, in boats, from the air. There is no consistent signature. No pattern an animal brain can lock onto and build a reliable escape response around. And here's the thing that makes it worse. You don't even have to be hunting. Researchers have found that the mere scent of a human, just the smell of your skin, your clothes, the invisible chemical trail you leave walking through a landscape, triggers fear responses in animals equivalent to encountering a large carnivore. A study using audio playback found that the sound of people talking casually caused prey animals to flee at twice the rate of lion vocalizations. Twice. A mountain lion, an apex predator, an animal that kills deer for breakfast. Less frightening, apparently, than two people chatting about their weekend plans. Some of you are already aware of this and use it as a personality trait. That's fine. What it tells us is that the fear isn't really about what you're doing. It's about what you are. Your smell, your shape, your voice. All of it reads as threat, regardless of intent, regardless of context, regardless of the granola bar. You are the pattern that has no pattern. And that, to a prey animal, is the worst possible thing. Not every animal got the memo, though. Some species figured out, through enough generations of not dying, that this particular predator is occasionally worth tolerating. Crows, famously. Urban crows in Seattle have been documented not just habituating to humans, but recognizing individual human faces, remembering which ones posed a threat, and passing that information to their offspring. A researcher who trapped and banded crows while wearing a specific mask found that crows across the city would dive bomb anyone wearing that mask years later, including people who had never interacted with crows at all. The grudge outlasted the individual bird, which is, honestly, a level of pettiness I respect. Habituation, the technical term for animals learning that a specific human presence isn't dangerous, does happen. City pigeons, park squirrels, the deer that wander through suburban gardens with the calm energy of someone who owns the place. These animals have recalibrated. They've essentially run enough data points on humans to conclude that this particular subset, in this particular context, is probably not going to kill them. But here's where it turns. The fear that makes most wild animals flee from you isn't just an inconvenience for hikers who want a closer look. It's a conservation early warning system, and it's broken. When animals are afraid of humans, they evacuate an area long before the damage becomes visible. They stop using habitat that's technically still intact. They disappear from a landscape quietly, without drama, before any population collapse registers in the data. By the time researchers notice the numbers dropping, the animals have already been gone for years. The fear makes us invisible to ourselves. We move through a landscape, see no animals, and conclude the ecosystem is undisturbed, when actually the absence is the signal. The empty forest isn't empty because nothing lives there. It's empty because everything that lives there heard you coming and left. A crow will remember your face and tell its children about you. Most animals won't get that far. Most animals will just be gone, and the forest will look exactly the same, and you'll finish your hike and think it was a beautiful day. On the Galapagos Islands in 1835, Charles Darwin noted something that stopped him cold. The birds didn't move. He walked toward them and they just stayed. He picked one up off a branch using the barrel of his rifle. It sat there. The marine iguanas ignored him entirely. The sea lions watched him approach with what he described as mild curiosity. Darwin, who was at this point a young man who had grown up hunting in England and understood exactly what animals did when a large predator walked toward them, found the whole thing deeply strange. What he was seeing was the baseline, the world before us. Islands and regions with no prior human contact produce animals that have no fear response to people whatsoever, not because they're naive, but because the threat detection algorithm simply never got written. There was no selection pressure. Nothing shaped like a human ever killed anything there. So the animals treat you the way they treat a large rock. Present, noted, irrelevant. Researchers who study first contact situations, and there are still a handful of remote locations where this is possible, describe the experience as quietly vertiginous. You're standing in a forest and nothing runs. A bird lands near your foot. A fox sniffs your boot. And instead of feeling like a nature documentary moment, it feels like something is wrong, because your entire body has been calibrated to expect the flight, and the flight doesn't come. The absence of fear reads, to us, as wrongness. What these places reveal is that the fear animals have of humans isn't some ancient, permanent feature of the natural world. It's a learned response, learned across generations, encoded through survival, but learned. It was installed. Which means, in principle, it could be uninstalled. Whether that's possible at scale, whether populations can genuinely recover that baseline fearlessness once humans become a permanent feature of the landscape, that's where the honest answer is. We don't fully know. There are rewilding projects that suggest partial recovery is possible. There are also species where the fear appears to have calcified into something that looks a lot like inheritance. The Galapagos birds still don't move. Everywhere else, they do. Go back to that trail. Go back to the forest, the hiking boots, the granola bar, the deer that exploded off the path and vanished into the undergrowth. It wasn't reacting to you specifically. It wasn't reacting to anything you did. It was running a program refined across hundreds of thousands of years of encounters with something shaped like you, smelling like you, moving through the world the way you move. It didn't assess your intentions. It didn't wait for evidence. The algorithm fired, and the deer was gone before you finished exhaling. That program is older than your species' current form, older than language, older than tools, older than anything you'd recognize as human civilization. And it runs in everything. The deer, the fox that vanished into the hedgerow, the birds that lifted out of the canopy the moment you rounded the bend. All of them carrying in their nervous systems a record of what we are. A record we wrote across deep time without knowing we were writing it. There's something quietly vertiginous about that if you let it land. You went for a walk. You brought a snack. And every animal within a quarter mile rearranged its entire afternoon around the fact of your existence. Not because of anything you chose, but because of what you are, collectively, historically, at a scale so large it stopped being personal a very long time ago. The squirrel on your lawn, the one having what appears to be a complete crisis over whether to cross the open grass, it doesn't know you're just sitting there. It doesn't know you mean it no harm. It knows one thing, the one thing that kept its ancestors alive long enough to produce it. Something that shape, that smell, that sound is the most dangerous thing this planet has ever generated. It's not wrong. The question, the one I keep turning over, is whether we're the first predator in the history of life on Earth that's actually capable of noticing what it is. And if so, what we're supposed to do with that. The deer doesn't wonder. You do.